It's great to be here with all of you. Hi, everybody. So I'm joining you today from my hometown of Los Angeles, but in a few days I fly back to Israel. And in spite of it all, I can't wait, if you can believe it. And that relates to the work we're going to do together today. It stems from my deep personal belief, conviction that the very best way, the first and most important thing each of us can do to heal the world is um, to live to live well and with intention, and to let that radiate out from within. So that's what we're going to work on together today. I don't know about you, but since October 7th, I have found the Jewish calendar to be grueling, grueling, unbelievable. Sometimes we come to holidays that they are so on the nose. It's like wisdom that our ancestors have known for 2,000 years that we need so much that it almost like it chokes me how precisely right on it is. And then we have a challenge like the one we're in right now, which we're in this period of time right now where we just marked Tisha B'Av, and I'm going to tell you in a moment the beautiful community of practice that I got to do that with the other day, and how we did that. Tisha B'Av, which in a certain way, it met me right where I was, because we are living in this time where things feel so extreme and so broken. And there's something, sort of validating about taking a day to say, you know what? The best thing to do right now is stop and fast and take stock and do tshuva, because that's what the world calls for. But now that Tisha B'Av is behind us, we're in this period of time. This coming Shabbat is called Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of consolation, which is something I think that we all need right now. And also on Shabbat, we already come to this day, which is Tu B'Av, the holiday of love. And so what we're going to do in our practice today is we're going to uh, do some really, really basic mindfulness work to see if we can't, from our practice, draw strength and guidance to make this move from Tisha B'Av, which is the day of the Jewish calendar, where we acknowledge the the world is more broken than whole. The temple was destroyed and has not yet been rebuilt. And yet, Tu B'Av, just a few days later, um, is it's our Jewish Valentine's Day. If you've never heard of it, um, it is a holiday of love, and it is meant to be a day that we get a taste of the world to come, a world full of love. And we need that right now, right? We need it so much. So I'm going to share my screen, and I just want to share with you a little snapshot. I want us to see if we can get inspiration from the description of this day that we get at the end of Masachet Ta'anit, the tractate of the Talmud about fasts. We're going to take their snapshot of this day called Tu B'Av, which is coming this weekend. And then we're going to see in our practice if we can make this internal shift from the world is broken, I feel helpless and hopeless, to the world is full of love, right? So I'm going to share my screen for just a moment. Um, all right. So if you've never heard of Tu B'Av before, I feel privileged to be able to introduce it to you. This is a day that I apologize. First, a word about Masechet Ta'anit. The tractate of Ta'anit in the Talmud is our tractate about fast days. And fasting is one of Judaism's most ancient technologies. The prophet Zechariah talks about it in response to the destruction of the first temple. It's one of our most ancient technologies when the world feels off track, spinning out more chaos than order. Jewish tradition teaches us it's time to stop, it's time to fast, and it's time to reset. And so that's what this tractate is about. It's about these ancient fast days. And today I want to show you where this tractate ends. It spends most of its space talking about how we fast, the technicalities of fast days. And then it says, but fasting is a practice that eventually can lead us to a glimpse of the world to come. And that happens for us on this 15th of Av, which is happening this Shabbat. So what is special about the 15th of Av? Well, it's the day when there was intermarriage permitted among the tribes. The Talmud is remembering a time that that wasn't allowed, and on this day it's allowed. The Talmud also says on this day, it's the day that was known as the breaking of the scythe. So this is the tool that they would use to cut down trees. They would break that tool, and so the trees would celebrate. But most of all, this is the image I want us to take as inspiration as we move into our practice. The Talmud shares this image of exactly this time of year, the time of the grape harvest. And it would say the 15th of Av is a day for love, for celebration. But I want us to look at really at how they did this. It was a day that the Jewish women would go and dance in the fields in white. Not just any white clothing that they would borrow from one another. Not borrow just from their neighbor, but they would borrow across socioeconomic status. So that, why? So that no one would feel embarrassed about what they had and what they didn't have. And I want us to see the sensitivity here on the Talmud and how we might recognize some of the brokenness of our world today. The Talmud knows how far the world can be from this place of dancing in the fields all in white. It knows about socioeconomic divisions, and yet it says after this work of being with our grief, being in the brokenness, we can get to this place where we can see these divisions, we can reach across them, we can lend one another clothes. And then the way, the image that the Talmud ends with, it says in the future, the Holy One will make a dance for the righteous, and God will sit among them in the Garden of Eden, and each and every one points with their finger, and it says, this is our God that we have been waiting for. So I want us to take this image that, by contrast to the world we find ourselves in now, that this image from the Talmud, that we might find ourselves as though we are in a field on a holiday of love, with socioeconomic divisions leveled, all of us in white and clothes that we have borrowed from one another. And this is the key, and this is what we're going to try to get to in our practice, that each of us will feel ourselves to be as though we're in the Garden of Eden, and each of us will have the ability to point towards, this says God, I'm going to call this unity consciousness, to recognize oneness and say, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. So I don't know about you, but this is what I need right now. In the last 24 hours, right? 48 hours, there were 40 Jews arrested for protesting against the actions of the modern state of Israel, right? We are in a place of profound division, profound brokenness. So we need this image of dancing in a circle, all in white, clothes borrowed, all of us looking and pointing and remembering, that's what God looks like. God looks like our togetherness. So we're going to see if we can't get there now in our practice. I'm going to begin to talk us into our sit. I'm going to give some guidance for what I want to suggest as a basic core practice for us today. And then I'm going to be quiet for a nice long while, and we're going to be in silent practice together. So already now, if you have your regular daily practice that you do and you want to settle in and begin, I want to give you permission to do that. I want to share with you just a word about the way I got to spend Tisha B'Av the other day. I was with a beautiful community, a diverse community in the Twin Cities, and we spent the day working with our grief, opening space to surface our brokenheartedness, to drop into grief, because deep inside of grief and brokenheartedness is love. And that's what we're going to work with right now. On the simplest level, what we're going to do for our sit today is we are going to inhale and let me give one more word for me. What we're going to work with together today is a perspective that I'd like to offer you, that both grief and fear are actually evidence of love. Both grief and fear are actually the shadow sides of love. So right now, as we begin, I want you to decide which challenging emotion is more present for you. Some of us are going to work with grief. Some of us are going to work with fear. So just the state of the world, whatever is you are is most heavy on your heart, just decide. Are you going to work today with sadness, with grief, or with fear? So I want us to observe that when I feel afraid and I feel the need to protect myself, that inside of that fear is my deep love of life, my deep love of the thing that I want to protect. And the same thing with sadness, with brokenheartedness. When I am in my grief, how is it possible that the world looks the way it does? That grief, which can be so heavy, so thick, the kernel that animates it inside of it is love. I love this world so much. That's why I feel this profound grief for the state of the world. And so, what we're going to do, and I believe that this is what's incumbent upon us to make this journey from Tisha B'Av to Tu B'Av, we're going to work now in practice. On the inhale, we are going to give ourselves permission to drop in to that challenging emotion if you're working with grief or with fear, to feel it. And I want you to trust me that inside of it is a kernel of love. And we're going to see if we can't flip it. And on the exhale, exhale out love. So we're going to inhale and drop in. Recognize the kernel of love that is in the heaviness. Exhale, send out love as an offering to my body, as an offering to the world. That's what I'd like us to play with today. I want to invite you now to take a comfortable seated position. Allow my voice to be with you and close your eyes or soften your gaze a little bit out in front of you. Inhale and lengthen the spine. If you have a back to your chair, feel your shoulder blades in contact with the back of the couch or the chair. Let it do what it was designed to do. Feel yourself supported. On your next exhalation, let the body come to stillness. We're going to work today with our breath. I'd like to invite you to allow the breath to help you focus in on one place in the body. So right now, scan the body and see if you can't find a place in your body that you are holding that challenging emotion you're going to work with today, either grief or fear. And just notice where it sits with you. And so some of us are going to work with a heavy feeling in the chest or a tight belly or clenched shoulders. Pick one spot in the body where you feel your sadness, your grief, or your fear, and its foothold in you. And on each inhalation, you're going to give yourself permission to drop into that grief. And as you come to the top of the inhale, I want you to imagine yourself flipping it over. And we're going to exhale out love. Working with the breath. On the inhale, we go inward, making space for what is in our bodies right now. And we exhale out love. Now, as you work to inhale into this heavy or tight place in the body, you'll notice the breath will start to help it to shift. And so just watch how it changes. In the inhalation, we go inward. It's almost as though we're peeking underneath, so that on the exhale, we can send out our love as an offering. We work in this way, making space for our pain. I just invite you to notice that what we're doing here on the inhale is actually a form of self-love. I hold myself in my grief or my fear so that I could find the love that is the kernel within it and offer it back out. I'd like to invite you now to take the last 3 breaths of this practice, really focusing on allowing your exhalation to be an offering of love to this world that is far too polarized, and how it really is a recipe for healing the divisions in the world. If we can just, on the inhalation, make space to honor the pain of the other, so that on the exhalation we can offer out love. Let's take one last deep inhalation together. And as we exhale, we send out prayers for goodness and love. It is as though we are standing, each of us, in a circle. Not your side and my side. Each of us equidistant. Each of us in white. And we look and see that what's real is not the divisions, but the unity. And I'll invite you now to open your eyes and rejoin me here. I just want to say one word before we close. So in this highly polarized time, the instinct to act, to do, becomes so strong. And what I want to suggest is that this practice, that this is the first way that we should act. Before we act in a way that is about changing the other, that first we go inward and we do this inner work of, I honor my pain so that I can discover the kernel of love, so that I can move from that. That the instinct to act is right, but that it really starts with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara, so much. I hope everybody can, if you can stick around at the top of the hour in a couple of minutes, just to reflect and have a chance to ask any questions about the teaching and the practice. Please do. If you need to leave us, Seifchem L'Shalom, farewell. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same channel. And right now we have an opportunity for those who are remembering loved ones to, if you want to put the names of anyone you're remembering today in the chat. And thanks to Natalie, who's been running our tech today and who has put up the text of the Mourner's Kaddish. You're welcome to unmute and join me in reciting Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Me Rabba, Alma Divrach, Viamlich Malkute, Chayechon Viamechon, Chaye Bechol Beit Yisrael, Agala, Bizman Kariv, Imro Amen. Hey Shmei Rabba
Shmei
Mevorach,
Rabba Mevorach,
Brach V'Yishtabach,
Praise
V'Yit'ar,
Mami,
Adar V'Yitaveh V'Yam Al Shmei, Ela Mikol Birchata, Ushbechata V'Chemata, Ve'alma V'Imru Amen. Lama Rabba Mishemaya B'Chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Shalom B'Mimrot V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll bring Sara back up here, and we'll remute folks. Here, hold on. There we go. All right, we'll just let Natalie's taking care of that. Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please just put question in all caps in the chat, and that way we'll know it's a question. Of course, feel welcome to respond to one another. Please, of course, use practice graciousness and assume goodwill and extend that to everyone, and just remember that we try to keep this an apolitical space and a space of support and kindness. So Sara, thank you so much for that wonderful teaching and for guiding us in that practice. I know I needed what you were offering today, and you said you did, and I imagine that's true for a lot of us. And it looks like there's half a question that came through. Um,
There's
okay,
a
well,
question
actually,
about Tonglen practice
there's
that
there's
I'd
one
love to answer.
question
Yeah.
there, and so we can go. Let's go there, and then I also want to invite Rana. It looks like you were halfway there. There we go. Okay, I see quite Rana's question too. So here's we'll put both of them out. So one question from Rana was, I agree that my fear is the mirror side of my love, but believe that I am not intending to change the other, but to change what no longer serves us in this world. So I think the question is, would you comment on that? So and then there was also the question from Madeline. The practice reminded me of the Buddhist practice Tonglen. Do you have that? Did you have that in mind, or maybe you said it and I didn't catch it? So there you go. Two invitations right there.
Yes, yes. Great. So first, a definition. So Tonglen practice is an advanced Buddhist practice where meaning advanced meaning like not for the faint of heart, where practitioners Buddhism has a wonderful teaching which says something like no one's enlightened until we're all enlightened. And it conceives of the Buddha as an individual, but that the Buddha won't, like, all that the Buddha knows, it's worth nothing if that knowledge is not held by every mode of consciousness. So it really, really leans into an idea of oneness that it's a little bit different than the Jewish idea of oneness, but because in this teaching we were playing with this image of the awareness at the center of the circle, it's a nice additional layer to what is the awareness at the center of the circle. So that sort of Buddhist awareness is a nice one for us to add into the mix. So in the practice of Tonglen, we really acknowledge that we are all one. And then if I'm doing Tonglen, I'm facing you in your pain. I actually take your pain into my system. I allow my heart to hold it so that my heart can metabolize it and transform it and offer it back to you as something else. It's a very rigorous practice, and it's different than what I was asking us to do today, and that relates to Rana's question. I hope I'm getting that name right. I did. I think, did you say yeah? So Rana said, I acknowledge that my fear is the shadow side of my love, but I don't feel like I'm trying to change anybody. So great. Rana, great. What I was inviting us to work with today is, what do we do? There are a lot of protests happening around the world by our people, about our people. And I will say, I'm a person who, the protest movement in Israel we've been protesting in Israel even longer than the protests have been going on in America. And so on one hand, protest is a hugely important response from a democratic standpoint, from a Jewish standpoint. But the question I was trying to invite us to ask today is, fundamentally, when the world is so very polarized, at the end of the day, what am I going to do? Am I going to try to change you, or am I going to try to change me? And so what I was inviting us to do today is to work with, how can I change me, because I think that we are falling too far into a trap of how I can change you. What I wanted to say about protests is that protests are one thing, but the reality today is that we're living in a time of war. So much war. So our instinct towards othering is gone to its like extreme. And so I think we need to find a different way.
Yeah. Really, really powerful stuff. And I think it ties in, your very last point about, the impulse to want to speak, to say something, to take some action, right? Which I think is particularly present. I might say seductive, but like I think is particularly present for us because of, these little guys and, the fact that we feel like, oh, I'm doing something when I, broadcast on social media or something. um it's such a practice, I know, for me anyway, just to like check that impulse all the time, is like, okay, what's driving that impulse right now? And you know and is that really the right action to take, and is that the best action to take? And I love the invitation to say, well, the first action to take is actually just create some space between stimulus and response, right? And like
Right.
just
So in
center.
that anecdote example, what I would say is that like I have to type my response, that what's really going on there is I feel helpless.
Right.
I feel helpless, and that the world will be healed when I can, exactly as you said, make space. Wait a minute. Let me feel into my helplessness, and let me find the the goodness that's inside of it, and let me amplify that. And then maybe move. Then maybe I act, but not act from the panicked, breathless, I feel helpless.
So that actually leads, David has a question here about, I had difficulty tapping into love. My question is, you have tips for more directly being able to tap into an area, a particular, yeah, I wonder how you want to respond to that.
Yeah. So, David, just to stay on this vein that we're on, it sounds counterintuitive. Look, the easiest way to tap into love is to think of how we're loved, or like the easiest way to tap into love is if you're an animal person and you have a pet that loves you unconditionally, and you come into the house and it loves you unconditionally. The most low-hanging fruit way to tap into love is to think of that puppy licking your face, and oh, right, love, goodness. But the problem is that kind of tapping in, it doesn't really get to the heart of the matter. And so it sounds counterintuitive, but this practice that we were working with today, I actually think this is a very powerful way to tap into the love. Because just to stick with this example that Josh and I were just talking about, the propulsion of I have to change their mind, right? But I'm going to do that by tweeting back or whatever it is. I have to change their mind. That if I can hold on that and find the source of the propulsion, and the source of the propulsion is a negative emotion, and then I can be with that negative emotion, which is about self-love and self-acceptance, then what's underneath all of that umph, what I'm suggesting is that what's underneath that umph actually is love. And that a way to get to it is by holding with the difficult, not in reactivity, but in holding self-acceptance, self-love, self-compassion, and that the love is under there.
Yeah. Hard question here from Lori about, would you please offer some guidance on how to direct the exhalation of love when the grief and sadness we are inhaling involves traumatic betrayal at the personal or even global level?
Yeah. So things are so extreme right now, right? I think I know the example that this person is referring to, but if I started to rattle them off, I would have to include five, right? And separate from we, so many of us have lived pain in our lives, that people did things to us that they shouldn't have done. So there's the personal. But if I were to just open the newspaper and pick, oh, what is this person thinking about? There's at least five different things that, right? So things are so extreme right now, which is why I feel so strongly that we have to go back to basics, back to exactly that. The more impossible this feels, the more I feel that we have to go back to basics. And, in a different IJS gathering or in a different context that's not a daily meditation, perhaps we would contemplate together right action, right? We should be warriors for justice. But because we gathered here to do half an hour of mindfulness practice, what I'm saying is that in this, when the world is this broken, and we go very down to basics, there's only two choices. Do I want to change you or do I want to change me? And what I'm suggesting is that me wanting to change you, there's actually some violence in that and some othering in that. And that the way of I sort of tried to do too much today, but if we were to really spend time with that sugya from the Talmud, that's what we would find. The way of the circle, meet in borrowed clothing, so that we're all equal and all of us equidistant, pointing and saying Shema Israel, saying God is one. That's the way of unity consciousness, not the way of othering.
The really interesting thing you just said about the violence of even changing ourselves. It's a quote of Lionel Trilling, the literary critic, when he gave a series of lectures at Harvard in the early 70s that were published as Sincerity and Authenticity. And there's a quote in that book that I've used many times, I've taught, where he talks about the meaning of the word authenticity, of authentic, is actually, its root in Greek is actually is a violent word. Authentes is like to commit a murder. And that the authenticity, the modern notion of authenticity, right? I need to be authentic to myself, that there's some version of me that I'm not, right? And I need to become that. And the violence that's sort of that we perpetrate against ourselves in that. And there's something so interesting about the notion of the borrowed clothing, which I'd never picked up on here before until you just taught it. But, right, it's not like I'm looking for something in my wardrobe, right? It's just that we're going to borrow each other's clothing. And so that there's an equalizing piece here of allowing ourselves, giving ourselves the space to just be a little differently, right? And it emphasizing more of being held in a circle of equality, than necessarily having to express our authenticity all the time, right? It's just a different way of thinking, possibly. So you've inspired some new thinking there. That's really interesting. Okay, we got a little more time here, and let's see. There was one more question I remember. Hold on, that I saw. Glenn's. When points of fear or sadness are encapsulated in thought and memory, even if they dissipate for a while, what is the effort to care for them as they reappear when loving action is avoided? Ooh, that's a sophisticated question.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And yet, Glenn, I think that your question, and the answer to your question, it's really why we do this seated meditation practice. Because the thing is that it's never like we do the work and then it's done. Like we meet the work within every moment, with every breath, and it takes practice. Like it takes a lot of practice. That like our deep grief. And now let's talk about, like, we all carry grief in all kinds of ways. Certainly, many of us carry personal grief, right? Like someone who I love died and I miss them and I feel grief, right? Like the most common, widespread, totally non-pathological type of human grief. It catches us all the time. And so it's the answer is the same in terms of it's this practice, but that I'm swept up in it. I meet that being swept up with self-love, with compassion for myself. And then I let the difficult emotion that comes be. I trust that there is love in it. And then I respond from that place, not from reactivity, but from self-compassion, which then leads to compassion for everybody around me. But it's so hard, which is why we practice like this, right? It takes practice.
Right. That's a good place for us to pause. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful questions and conversation. If you want to save the chat, now's a good time. There's 3 dots at the top of the chat box, and you can click on them, and it'll save the chat to your computer. Thank you to Rabbi Sara for your wonderful teaching, and and everything today. Thanks to Natalie for her support on Natalie Rushinoff for her support on our tech today. Thanks to everybody for being here and being part of this community. And we look forward to being back with you tomorrow or whenever you can join us. So